Highline is more than schools. It's people. Students, educators, leaders, families, and neighbors, each with a story to tell. These are our people, and these are our stories. Welcome to the Promise Podcast, where we share how the Highline Promise comes to life. Every student is known by name, strength, and need, and graduates prepare for the future they choose. I'm your host, Superintendent Duran. All right, greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Promise Podcast. My name is Dr. Duran, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm very excited because we are at Highline High School, and we're in one of our classrooms today, and we have one of our Highline High School educators joining us on the podcast. So let's just get started by please introduce yourself, your name, your role, and how you're connected to Highline.
My name is Jesus Torres. I'm a teacher here for social studies and world languages. Specifically, I'm teaching this year Chicano Studies and AP Spanish as Language and Culture. And I've been a teacher here for 4 years.
Great. And prior to being here in Highline, can you talk a little bit about what you were doing beforehand and your connection to California?
Absolutely. I was in California for the longest time. And I'm born and raised in Mexico City, but I came as a teenager in many years ago. And and I was an educator in California for over 30 years.
That's wonderful.
At various levels.
Okay, various levels. I also know you have a connection both to UCLA and USC. We've talked about that because my in-laws are big UCLA fans. Can you talk a little bit around how both those two institutions have had impact in your life?
Sure. I did my undergrad at USC. Then I went to graduate school at UC Irvine and then at UCLA, where I got my master's and then my PhD. And that's my connection. I'm a SoCal, Orange County and LA connection.
Okay, very good. So one thing I've always wanted to ask you is when you think about, how did you end up where you are today? What's your family story? Was it education, college, always something that your parents encouraged you to do, or what led you to the path of education?
I believe the path of education came from my grandfather and my father. My grandfather was a carpenter in Mexico City, and my father still lives. He's a jeweler, and both of them taught their crafts, and I learned from them to teach. And then when my brother and I came to the United States to live with my aunt and uncle, we both went into education when we were in college, and that's how we ended up in education. I think we were trained by our families to always teach. They were not in education, they were not in higher education, but we had a vocation to teach our craft or whatever we knew to others.
Okay.
So we have that mentality.
Yeah.
Throughout.
Would you consider yourself first generation college student?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
First generation. I'm
So
one of 11 children, and only a few of us have gone to college.
Okay.
Out of 11, about 5 or 6.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? What was it like that you remember from just having to navigate financial aid, applications to college? Was there anybody that was supporting you in the background, or?
Absolutely. I had the privilege of going to a high school in the San Fernando Valley, San Fernando High School, where Richie Valens went to school, Alex Padilla, George Lopez, and a couple of Heisman Trophy winners too, Charlie White, etc. And so we lived in a neighborhood that was 30% African American, about 20% Anglo, and the rest was Latino. So we had some challenges that are similar to the ones we have here at our site. As a matter of fact, the demographics are similar. And at the time, a while back, we didn't have as much support as we do now. I think most of our support came from educators, committed educators. I can mention names, etc., but it was educators that did it. All kinds of, from sports to counselors, but especially classroom teachers. They're the ones that encouraged us the most by instilling in us the need to go to school, not just for ourselves, but for the barrio, for our people. We knew that it was just about us. This is educators that were formed and trained in the 60s and 70s, so they had a vocation, they had a calling that I think we should continue to have.
Yeah, I think that's so important. People have such a big influence, and I often talk around. I'm also first generation. My father was a high school dropout. My mom did finish high school, and it was my older sister who figured out the path to college. And she didn't get as much help from what she would say counselors and teachers, but she just had that inner desire that got us to do more and to experience more, and that's what really pushed her to be the first one in our family to go to college and actually graduate from college.
Exactly, because that's important. You're right, to not just go, but to finish.
Yeah, that's a huge part. It's one of the big issues we're dealing with here in Washington, where we have a number of students who will go into college, university, higher education, but they're not finishing. And that's a problem because they're picking up debt, carrying it, and then, not being able to have a career that they may have chosen with that debt becomes a real burden for them. So we really are trying to prevent that, ensure that students are committed and have the right supports for college these days. So really important.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, here in Highline, our promise is to know every student by name, strength, and need so they graduate prepared for the future that they choose. So how do you see the Highline promise come to life in your daily work experience here in the classroom at Highline High School?
Well, I try to connect in as much as I can within my limitations as a person, as an educator, to know as much as I can within the scope of what we can find out about our students. And when we talk about their strengths and needs, we spot, after being in education for a long time, what their strengths are. And then we also acknowledge their challenges, their needs. And I think for the most part, all of our students share about the same strengths and needs, which is the need to be recognized, the need to feel important, the need to learn, the need to ponder about things, the need to participate. And I also see the challenges that they have from homes that are maybe what we used to call in the past broken homes, or homes with challenges now, and which presents all kinds of issues for us in terms of their ability to concentrate, their ability to be in good health, to sleep well, to be active, to engage. So I think that there are a lot of challenges that we have, and then and knowing their names, which can be a challenge for those of us who are not that young anymore. So we so we know their names as much as we can. I sometimes go by their last names because I get confused with all the first names because they repeat themselves. So but that is fun because I think through those recognitions we get to know more about them. And I try to connect within my own personality and within my background and within what I know about their background. And there are other groups of students that are not as close to in terms of cultural connection, but I still have a human connection. And that I do continue to do because for the most part, we live in a community that has immigrant working class values. And that's something that is universal.
Yeah.
It's not just specific to Latino students. So I think that we can connect through that, whether they're born here or abroad. We still have those. As a matter of fact, we live in a state that many folks can trace their background to other parts of the country, not just other parts of the world. Okay, like coming in from Mexico and California and Colorado and New Mexico. So we share that immigrant spirit.
Yeah, we move around, definitely find the right place. Okay. So we've been in Highline for the same amount of time, 4 years, and one of the things that we have in our strategic plan goals is a culture of belonging. And one of the reasons why I love to come to your classroom is I feel like you embody a culture of belonging here in your classroom. And even when I look around the room for our listeners, if you came into this classroom, you would just see tons of examples of cultural relevant materials, of artists, singers, writers, advocates. And I just love the sense that I feel when I walk into this room. So how do you work you do a great job of creating that culture of belonging, but you also push kids at an academic level? Because I've been in here where kids have the AP rubric in front of them and they're examining and creating arguments, and you're encouraging them and really ensuring that they have really strong resources to support their backings. And so how are you able to do both? Why is it important that we have this culture of belonging, but yet have really high expectations for our students and ensure that they are exposed to rigorous content and material and expectation?
I think the key word is the one you mentioned at the beginning, which is the relevancy. I think they can relate to their culture or other cultures as well and see that connection, that universality of our cultures. And they also see the need to be strong when they walk out of our school system. When they leave in June of 2028, this class that's behind me, our sophomores, it is our job to have them as strong as we can. We're just talking about that earlier. So in 2 years, we need to have them with as many skills as we can to give them and to be mentally and emotionally as prepared as we can prepare them so that when they go out there, they can compete. After all, it'll be competition, whether they go to an occupational center, community college, straight to a 4-year school. and emotionally and culturally, they need to be as strong as they can, because those wins will be strong. And if they're strong in their roots with their families and even with their school and their community, I think they'll be stronger students and members of society when they move on after going to college.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I often shared with people the example when I was here a few weeks ago where they were doing that work to, use a rubric to explain their arguments and to cite the source. Because there's a lot of research that shows that it's not about the number of classes that students actually take in high school. It's the exposure to the rigorous coursework that's really the key thing for them to be able to be successful in college. And you do a beautiful job of doing that. And I just appreciate the work that you do to ensure students have that level of rigor in the classroom, because they'll need it as they move forward.
Thank you.
So you've been Highline, as I mentioned earlier. So tell me a little bit around, so who do you feel has influenced you as an educator, either here in Highline or along the way of your career? Who's been influential in your life?
In terms of education,
Yep.
I would say the biggest influence that I had were my teachers in high school when I got here. Genaro Ayala was still around. He lives in San Francisco now. Sal Castro, whom I met, he was a leader, a teacher that I met back in the late 80s, early 90s. And in terms of helping us in LA to have a vocation to serve. And colleagues. I've learned a lot from colleagues, especially from veteranos, from older colleagues. Back when I was in my mid-20s, I thought I knew it all. But it was these veteranos, these veterans that took me under their wings, and they said, look, you're going well, but make sure you keep it straight. Make sure you continue to be honest and expect high things from our students and don't sell out.
Great. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
That's basically how they pushed us.
Yeah.
And so that made it fun, because I hope I continue to make them as proud as I can, because they're my mentors.
That's great.
And some have passed on, and some are still alive, and I call them to keep me in check, because they're my heroes.
That's great. Well, when this podcast is released, you can share it with them.
Absolutely.
And I can tell them now that you're definitely keeping it real. You have not sold out.
Oh, thank you.
Well, wonderful. So what keeps you motivated or gives you hope when you think about your students in this community?
I think the energy and the working class values that I mentioned before. I think they have a certain energy, and they have what we call in Spanish vergüenza, which is difficult to translate, but it's the pride in doing things on your own, and not necessarily getting handouts. They just want opportunities. So I think we live in a community that celebrates that. We always talk about in our classes about la familia, or family, our faith in the broader sense, not just religious sense, but in optimism, our sense of humor, our culture, our working class values, and that keeps us strong. And that's one of the things that I think are admirable about working class communities. And I've sensed that from our students who are from Ethiopia, our students who are from Somalia, our students who are from different parts of the world, from Vietnam, from Latin America. So they all share that common ground, or they come from working class values here and within the States as well. And they embrace that, and that's one of the reasons why I think that I'm proud of the fact that I meet with them. I was just speaking to someone earlier, a couple of days ago, and I see them at church, I see them at the store, I see them at the gym, and this is something I had never experienced in my life as an educator.
Yeah.
To work so close to live so close to my working site, and to do so many things within my home.
Yeah, you're really part of the community.
Yeah,
to be able to see that.
I had never experienced that before, because LA being so large, it was difficult. But here, I managed to do that. I was lucky.
That's great. Oh, I'm just real curious too, because now that you've been here in Highland for 4 years, have you tapped into any of our community partners like Latino Civic Alliance, Para los Niños? Have you worked with them at all to help support students out in the community?
Yeah, we did work with Latino Civic Alliance. They used my rooms for my room for 3 years.
Okay.
And I go to some of their events and activities. And as a matter of fact, one of the people that used to do that, he was my assistant coach when I coached at Tai. So I do have some connections with that group, at least.
Yeah, we recently met with them, and I want to just give them a shout out. Our community partners just do amazing work, but Latino Civic Alliance specifically is doing some work right now to support families who have students who may be struggling a little bit in school. for a variety of reasons. But the model that I love is that they actually start working with the parents. They're supporting, understanding what the concerns are, what the needs are, and then they start working with the student and the school as needed to be able to create a better path for a student who may have strayed a little bit from, what their future could be. So really appreciate the work they do, because one thing I've learned in education, especially here in Highlands, that we cannot do it by ourselves. We need community partners. We need our community to surround our students and our families, especially during these times that are incredibly trying, to ensure that they have what they need to be successful.
No, that's great. It's great that they have that, because we, all the resources are going to help our kids.
All right. Well, as you look around the classroom here, you have quite a few students here who are with you almost every day. What's one of the hopes that you have for them after they leave your classroom and leave Highline?
After they leave my classroom, I hope they can have a sense of appreciation, a stronger sense of appreciation for themselves. All we do is try to mirror who they are, and as much as we can, and to celebrate who they are, and to find their strengths. Probably acknowledge our weaknesses as well, because we have a history of trials and errors, okay, and we need to acknowledge that, so we can, when make the same mistakes, we can stay strong, stay the course, and I hope they have a greater sense of appreciation for their families, more so than they already have it. But probably looking at it from a school perspective, it's like we're just confirming their strength. They come with a lot of skills from their homes. We're just celebrating that.
Yeah.
Their parents are responsible for these types of students being here with us. Dual language is not our doing. It's their parents' doing. We just want to reaffirm that and add to it. But they come with that strength.
That's right.
And after Highline, I like I said, I hope we, after 4 years of high school, at least in our school and within our district, they will have left with their skills necessary to contribute, to feel strong and proud, and to be to have a sense of direction in terms of serving. That's my thing. So I think if they can be successful, they can be an astronaut, but still contribute in different ways. I mean,
that's wonderful. I really like
or
that.
Or even the owners of some major enterprise, which is fun too.
Exactly. I believe that's true. I really appreciate that's a question that I ask many, especially our educators around, just their greatest hope, their dreams for students, and just this idea of being able to contribute, into society, be able to participate fully in our democracy, and to be able to just have opportunities for things that they can't even imagine right now, and whether it is owning a business or probably going to be beyond the moon in a few more years, the way things are going right now. But I want our students to have that level of experience, and most importantly, be able to understand what it means to live in a democracy and to be able to contribute and then serve back in the community. So I agree wholly with you that I hope our students have that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to shift a little bit here, and you can take this professionally or personal here for our last question. But what's something you're reading, watching, or listening to right now that you would recommend to our listeners?
Well, we're over the past few weeks, we've been hit with some news in terms of Chicano history that make us reflect as to what our direction is, from Dolores Huerta to Cesar Chavez to Dr. Julia Acuña, which just passed on about a week and a half ago. That's the book we're using here. So I think we're reflecting on, I've been thinking a lot about Jorge Gonzalez, who's on the back, and about what he would say now, what he would think about ICE or the war in Iran, or back it was Vietnam. Back then it was other issues, but civil rights in the 60s. But I think that Occupied America, I've been reading it a bit, his poetry from Jorge Gonzalez and Dr. Acuña, especially because I met him when I was in high school, and I also saw him when I was in college, when I was the president of Mecha. I took him over there. So it hit me, because it reminded me of all the teachers that helped me along the way. So I think I made that personal connection with Corky. Cesar Chavez, I met him too a long time ago when Dolores' son Fidel graduated from USC. I was there. I was only a freshman when he was graduating. I guess I'm dating myself here. But so I met them all. They're all part of my history in different ways, and they all contributed. And perhaps, like all, we will have plus. I won't get into the details of that because we may not know all the details, but challenging ourselves to revisit our history, to still feel strong, to acknowledge our contributions. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm reading the poetry from Corky Gonzalez because he was not just a civil activist. He was not just an activist. He was also a poet.
Yeah.
With her. He was good. Beyond and a boxer as well. So he was a Renaissance man. So I think he's worth reading again.
That's great.
That's what I'm doing. Him and Dr. Acuna.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's Corky's always been one of my favorite. Being born and raised in Denver, he was a hometown hero for us in many ways. We looked at him for so many things, and then watching his whole family and the influence that they've had in Denver and Colorado and larger areas. And they started up a school there. That his daughter started up, which has been really powerful. And then, as you know, also I'm a huge fan of Yo Soy Joaquin. It's one of my favorite poems, and our youngest is actually named Joaquin for that specific reason.
Joaquin and Mateo, right?
Yeah, Joaquin and Mateo, yeah. And I use that poem, at the start of every year with our new educators who come into Highline. I actually will use that poem as a basis to really help people understand who we are as Highline, how important it is for individuals to understand and know their own identity. Because when you're clear around your own identity, it's going to be able to allow you to connect to your students in a way to help them to understand what their identity is. And the beauty of us as individuals and how we can collectively come together, which is all that amazing background and history, and there's so much perseverance and, just greatness from the people where we came from. So Corky Gonzalez, that's a good one to read. So, well, Jesus, I want to thank you so much for being part of the Promise Podcast. It's a pleasure to be here at Highline High School classroom. And I think we can do a little bit of a estudiantes. Un gran aplauso por el esquite.
Gracias. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Promise Podcast. These stories remind us that Highline is built by people, students, staff, families, and community members, each making the promise real in their own way. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. I'm your host, Dr. Ivan Duran. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you soon.